I'm Darren Wendell with Wendell Fishing, and these are the things that completely transformed the way I fish. Number one, learn to skip your baits. Skipping baits used to absolutely humble me, but after enough time on the water, I finally learned how to consistently get a bait way back under docks, under those overhangs, and into that tight cover where pressured fish love to hide. Now, some lures are going to skip better than others. Compact, flat, balanced baits, those glide across the water instead of digging into it. And those soft plastics are going to skip really well. Those wacky worms, those YAMATANUKIs, those Texas rigs, all are really great places to start if you want to start skipping baits. I would recommend learning on spinning gear first and then move into bait casting skipping, which can definitely be tougher to master. But once you do, you start unlocking high percentage areas most anglers simply can't reach. Number two, always carry the Unconfidence lure, right? One of the biggest things that helped me grow as an angler was forcing myself to throw lures I didn't have confidence in. Instead of fishing the same spots with the same confidence bait every single trip, I started experimenting with techniques like glide baits, and deep cranking, and punching mats, finesse fishing, and other presentations that honestly felt awkward at first. And look, this part is hard, right? Because when you're learning a new lure, you're probably not going to catch fish at the same rate as your confidence bait. And you get really tempted to immediately pick up that old reliable setup. But sometimes the best thing you can do is leave that confidence rod at home entirely. Take one rod, one reel, one lure that you suck at fishing and force yourself to figure it out. That is how you stop being a one-trick pony and become a versatile angler who can adjust to different conditions instead of just panicking when your confidence bait dies. And honestly, catching your first good fish on a lure you struggled with is one of the most rewarding feelings in fishing. Number three, stop catching pet bass. Right? At some point, I realized that fishing is for the same fish over and over again, right? You know the ones, same dock, same laydown, same little stretch of grass where those big bass live. You know exactly where it sets up, and honestly, it starts becoming more like a pet than a challenge. And while there's nothing wrong with having confidence spots, consistently fishing the same water can quietly stop you from growing as an angler. So I started forcing myself to fish unfamiliar lakes, new rivers, and places where I had zero history. No memories, no confidence spots, no safety net. And honestly, that's where I learned the most. Fishing new water forces you to read conditions and locate fish faster, adapt, and actually understand why bass are where they are instead of relying on memory. And there's something just incredibly rewarding about pulling up to a completely unfamiliar lake, figuring them out, and stacking them up. Number four, develop a post-mortem mindset. Not just at the end of the day, but after every interaction with the fish. Every catch, every lost fish, every short strike, every follow that didn't commit, every missed blow up. Instead of just firing another cast out there, I started asking myself questions. Why did I miss that fish? Was I fishing too fast? Was the bait too big? Was it too small? Was it the wrong color? Was it the wrong cadence? Were they swiping at it out of a reaction, or were they actually feeding? I stopped treating fishing like random luck and started treating every fish interaction like feedback. And to be honest with you, bass tell you way more than anglers realize, right? If you're paying attention. The anglers who improve the fastest are the ones constantly making adjustments throughout the day instead of stubbornly forcing the same thing over and over. All right, number five, I stopped fishing blind. I stopped randomly casting and started using technology to fish smarter. Fish finders, mapping, contour lines, weather, side imaging, all that matters. Now, look, you're gonna run into some electronics haters out there. Who cares what they think, right? If you want to use electronics to help locate fish, structure, bait, depth changes, and productive water, go for it. Last time I checked, this is the United States of America. But at the end of the day, electronics are just tools. A fish finder won't magically make a fish bite, but it can help you stop wasting time fishing dead water. Once I learned how to interpret side imaging and down imaging and sonar returns to locate structure and bait fish and actual bass, my fishing career absolutely changed. And honestly, I've used everything from entry-level units like the Garmin Striker 4 all the way up to forward-facing sonar units like the Lowrance Eagle Eye 9, and I've got a Humminbird Mega Live 2 with an Explorer unit headed to my house right now. Now, personally, I'm not trying to stare at a screen all day instead of fishing, but I also don't want to spend all day casting at fishless water when technology can help me eliminate unproductive areas faster and spend more time around actual fish. Number six, I quit expecting every trip to be amazing. Like, one of the biggest things that made me a better fisherman was managing my expectations. I used to launch the kayak expecting every trip to turn in some epic YouTube highlight reel where I'm absolutely wrecking them. And when that didn't happen, right, I get frustrated fast. But over time, I realized that fishing isn't just about catching fish. It's about solving problems. I stopped expecting every trip to be lights out and started embracing the process of figuring fish out. Instead of getting mad during tough bites, I started treating difficult days like learning opportunities. Because honestly, some of the biggest fishing breakthroughs I've ever had came on the hardest days. Sometimes bass need time to turn on. Sometimes the weather changes. Sometimes you need to adjust 15 different things before you crack the code. And the anglers who stay patient long enough to adapt are usually the ones who eventually figure it out. Number 7, I learned the biggest bass don't live on the bank. Now look, before comment section explodes, I know there are giant bass that live up shallow around the bank. I get it. Some absolute donkeys get caught flipping shallow cover and skipping docks and throwing frogs and beating the bank. Guys, I get it. But what I realized over time is that a lot of the bigger, less pressured fish spend time offshore where most anglers simply never fish. So instead of only casting at visible targets, I started learning how to target submerged structure, right? Those transition zones, brush piles, rock piles, ledges, offshore grass, and isolated cover away from the shoreline. And honestly, that completely changed the caliber of fish I started to catch. And a lot of those offshore fish see way fewer lures than fish sitting under the same community dock getting cast at 400 times a week. Next up, number 8, I ditched the throw whatever looks cool approach and started selecting lures based on the actual fishing conditions. I now match my bait choices to factors like season and water temperature and water clarity. You got weather conditions, you got depth, local forage. And by understanding when bass prefer reaction baits or finesse presentations, or when to slow down versus to speed up, I started maximizing my bite rate instead of just randomly hoping for the best. And honestly, when you're newer to fishing or just trying to figure out what lures to throw and when to throw them, one tool that's really been helpful for me is the Deep Dive app. And one feature I've been using a lot is the lure selector, right? You can plug in the conditions like water clarity and season and temperature and weather. It helps give you a better idea of what style of bait you should be throwing to increase your odds of getting bit. Because one of the fastest ways to improve as an angler is simply putting the right lure in your hands more often. So if you're interested in the Deep Dive app, I will throw the link in the description below. And also I'll throw it up there as the first pinned comment. Number 9, I stopped forcing power fishing. And don't get me wrong, power fishing's fun. Covering water, getting reaction bites, cracking big hook sets. That's the kind of stuff that a lot of us love. But eventually I realized there are days bass simply don't want aggressive presentations, right? They don't want to chase. Cold fronts, heavy pressure, post-frontal conditions, bluebird skies. Sometimes those fish want subtle, slow, and finesse. That's when I started embracing the drop shots, the Ned rigs, shaky heads, lighter lines, smaller profiles, and slower presentation. And I'll be honest with you, it took me a while to fully buy into finesse fishing because I used to think it was boring, right? But once I stopped forcing fish to eat the way I wanted them to eat and started letting the fish tell me what mood they were in, my consistency went way up. Number 11, I quit fishing history. I used to go back to the spots just because they worked before. I pull up thinking, well, I caught them here last weekend, and then spend way too much time trying to force something that clearly wasn't happening. And what I finally realized is that bass are constantly moving based off of weather and water temperature and bait movement, fishing pressure, oxygen in the water, seasonal transitions, current. Just because fish were there doesn't mean they are going to be there today. So I stopped fishing memories and started fishing what the lake was telling me in real time. And that one mindset shift completely changed the way I break down water. Now I pay attention first to conditions, and honestly, some anglers get stuck because they spend years recycling old patterns instead of just evolving what the fish are actually doing in the moment. Number 12, I finally started trusting my gut, right? After years on the water, I stopped second guessing every decision. If an area looked right, I slowed down and worked it thoroughly instead of making 3 casts and instantly running to the next spot that looked good. Now, if I pull up to a certain area and my spidey sense starts going through the roof because I can see multiple high percentage factors all coming together in one place, you know, bait and shade and current and depth, experience has taught me to slow down. So I really leaned into my experience and started trusting my gut. If something felt off, I adjusted. This is why they say time on the water is the most effective thing that you can do for your fishing. Number 13, some of you won't like this. You got to get off the bank, right? It's going to help you unlock more water. One of the biggest things that changed my fishing was simply getting off the bank and into a fishing kayak. And look, there are absolutely big bass caught from shore every single day, I get it. But when you're bank fishing, you're usually limited to a tiny percentage of the lake, while the majority of the fish and unpressured water sit completely out of reach. Getting into a kayak is going to unlock 95% more of that lake. And suddenly you can reach offshore structure, hidden grass lines, isolated cover, those creek channels, those docks, those points, those ledges, those backwater areas, and unpressured fish that most bank anglers simply can't get to. And honestly, some of the best areas on the lake are the places where most people are unwilling or unable to go. And like I said, you don't need some crazy expensive setup to get started. There are plenty of options, especially on the Facebook Marketplace if you want to get into a fishing kayak on the cheap. And look, since I just recommended getting into a kayak and opening up more of the water, make sure that you do it safely. Head over to kfast.co, that's Kayak Fishing Advanced Safety Training, and sign up for the basic course, right? It's affordable, it's beginner friendly, and it comes with a few hours of instruction around PFD safety, weather awareness, trip planning, hazard recognition, self-rescue, equipment safety, and making smarter decisions on the water. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to make it home safely after every trip. All right, so now if you want to level up your fishing and really go tactical into some lures, this one breaks down the CHATTERBAIT, one of the best search baits ever made for covering water and triggering those reaction strikes. And this one right here, the SWIMJIG, catches absolute giants and might be one of the most underrated lures in fishing. Well guys, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you out in the water.